Imagine a serene Newfoundland beach. A small boy splashes in shallow waves with his mother on a summer morning. Suddenly, tragedy, the camera drifts away to reveal 13-month-old Zachary Turner and his mother, Shirley, lifeless on the shore, an innocent child who has been drowned. This horrific scene is captured in Dear Zachary, and it is all too real. On August 18, 2003, Shirley Turner waded into the Atlantic Ocean with baby Zachary strapped to her, drowning them both in a final, desperate act of murder-suicide. Please help this channel grow, like the video, try the new hype feature, leave a comment and subscribe for more stories. This helps us a lot. Thank you. That moment, Zachary's body floating beside his mother, is the climax of a story of love and betrayal, of unthinkable loss and the urgent questions it raises about how a family and a justice system could fail so profoundly. Dr. Andrew Bagby was not just any young doctor, he was beloved by all who knew him. A California native and childhood friend of filmmaker Kurt Quinn, Andrew acted in Quinn's early amateur films and was known for his warmth and charisma. He moved to the Pittsburgh area to complete his medical training, working as a family practice resident at Latrobe Hospital. Colleagues remembered him as just a bigger-than-life type of guy, a wonderful human being who loved people, and had real zest for life. Friends would later note that he was the kind of person whom everyone wanted at their wedding. Quinn recalls that Andrew was the only person I've ever met who was asked by 7 different people to be best man. In short, Andrew was successful, outgoing, and deeply caring, the sort of person with countless friends and family who admired him. Andrew's life changed when he met Dr. Shirley Jane Turner, a Canadian physician. Shirley, 13 years older than Andrew, had been a medical school graduate and had children from previous marriages. The relationship was tumultuous. Despite his parents' and friends' unease about Shirley's volatile and controlling behavior, Andrew took up a long-distance romance with her while he completed his studies. On October 29, 2001, Shirley and Andrew had a major fight in Pennsylvania, and Bagby told her they were done. Reportedly, on November 3, 2001, after a visit to Latrobe, Andrew ended the relationship for good. Heartbroken and furious, Shirley briefly flew to Iowa, where she was living at the time. But she could not let go. On November 5, 2001, barely 24 hours after being sent away, Shirley Turner suddenly drove nearly 1,000 miles back to Pennsylvania, arriving early that morning at Latrobe, 40 miles east of Pittsburgh. That evening, she arranged to meet Andrew at a scenic spot in Keystone State Park. There is a videotape in Dear Zachary of the last time friends saw Andrew alive. He was at a social gathering in Latrobe, joking and smiling with colleagues, unaware that his life was about to end. Who was Shirley Turner? To most of Andrew's circle, she was a stranger. She'd been his girlfriend only briefly, and after he dumped her she became desperate. In Dear Zachary, Bagby's friend Gretchen Rippey-Lewis tells the camera, "You'll never guess who showed up on my doorstep, the psychotic bitch." A shocking quip, but it captured how frightened Andrew's friends were when Shirley suddenly reappeared. In retrospect, investigators would see this as a warning sign. Turner had come back to make good on her threats. One more piece of the setup is crucial: Shirley Turner was pregnant. After fleeing the crime scene, she later revealed that during one of her visits to Pittsburgh, she and Andrew had conceivably reunited and she became pregnant. By the time Andrew's body was found, Shirley was already expecting his child, a detail she would later exploit to escape U.S. justice. In fact, after she left Pennsylvania, she flew to Canada and announced to strangers that she was carrying Andrew Bagby's baby. She eventually gave the baby the name Zachary Andrew, born on July 18, 2002. This tiny boy would be the innocent center of the tragedy to come. By that fall of 2001, then, the stage was set. Dr. Andrew Bagby, popular doctor, devoted son and son-in-law, beloved friend, was trying to move on with his life after ending a dangerous romance. On November 5, 2001, he agreed to meet Shirley Turner one last time in a secluded Pennsylvania park. No one could imagine that meeting would become his last. Late on the evening of November 5, 2001, under a clear autumn sky, Andrew Bagby arrived at Keystone State Park. Perhaps he thought he would have one last civil conversation with his ex-girlfriend. Instead, he was met with death. Investigators later concluded that as soon as Andrew sat in his car, Shirley Turner opened the passenger door and unloaded her pistol into him. The next morning, a driver noticed Andrew's red sedan parked at a picnic area. Inside, Andrew was slumped at the wheel, having been shot 5 times. Bullets tore through his head, face, and chest, and even 2 bullets struck his backside. It was execution-style violence, carried out at close range. Allegheny County Coroner Cyril Wecht would note that Bagby also suffered blunt force trauma to the skull. It appeared she even struck him over the head after he fell. There was no mercy in this killing. The scene was bloody and personal. Word of the brutality spread quickly. As reporters descended, details emerged. Investigators found a live .22 caliber bullet cartridge on the ground beside Bagby's body. A forensic firearms instructor identified the caliber and brand as the same one Shirley Turner had been firing at a gun range just days before. In fact, Turner owned a small .22 caliber pistol that had a known jam at its semi-automatic firing pin. It would sometimes spit out live rounds onto the floor. The state police realized that every live round Bagby had was likely a misfire from her gun. The spent and live casings matched ammunition purchased by Turner. Confronted with this evidence, her story unraveled. Initially, Turner insisted she was homesick in Iowa on the night of November 5. But phone records proved otherwise. She had made calls from motels along the 1,000-mile highway from her Iowa home back to Latrobe on November 4 and November 5. In interviews with Pennsylvania State Police, Turner wavered in her explanations, first saying the gun had gone missing, then later claiming she gave it to Bagby. Investigators learned from her firearms coach that in fact she told him the gun had been stolen, a lie. Eventually, she was confronted with the recording of her own phone calls and the matching bullet, and quietly flew back to Canada. By November 6, prosecutors felt they had built a strong case. "We charged Dr. Shirley Turner with murder and criminal homicide because all the evidence ties Turner to the crime scene," said Westmoreland County District Attorney John Peck. Indeed, police now believed the motive had been revenge for Andrew breaking off the relationship. Shirley Turner, a 40-year-old physician, was suddenly not only Bagby's ex-girlfriend but his prime suspect, and she had just landed back on Canadian soil to escape justice. For family and friends, the horror was unimaginable. Bagby's parents, David and Kathleen Kate Bagby, were hundreds of miles away in New York when the call came. His many friends and colleagues in Pennsylvania were in shock. News anchors talked about Andrew as a wonderful human being, recalling how he loved his patients and always put others at ease. At the hospital where he trained, doctors set up an impromptu memorial. His roommate remembered him in tears. "Andrew was awesome, he had a real zest for life," he later said. No one could make sense of it. Why would someone do this to Andrew Bagby? The seeds of despair were planted. A brilliant doctor, loving father-to-be, had been snuffed out in cold blood. And now, across the ocean, his killer was pregnant with his child. Once police had named Shirley Turner as their suspect, American authorities moved fast. On November 7, 2001, Pennsylvania requested Canadian assistance. A provisional warrant went out through Interpol and the Department of Justice, asking Canadian authorities to locate and detain Dr. Shirley Turner. Turner had already flown to Newfoundland, Canada, where she had family. She was living under assumed names in St. John's at that point. But Canadian officers soon arrested her on the murder warrant. By early December 2001, Turner was in Canadian custody but not for long. A judge granted her bail as the extradition process began. There was no great show of force. In fact, Shirley Turner posted bail reportedly as little as $100 and walked free, still pregnant with Bagby's baby. This Canadian chapter would prove tragically pivotal. Turner's lawyers invoked every possible delay. They argued technicalities and requested trial dates be pushed back. With each hearing, Turner's condition as an expectant mother became a factor. By July 2002, she had given birth to a son, Zachary Andrew Turner. Andrew Bagby's parents had meanwhile uprooted from California to Canada to fight for custody of their grandson. In September 2002, a Newfoundland family court finally ruled there was enough evidence to consider Turner a flight risk and handed temporary custody of baby Zachary to David and Kate Bagby. The Bagbys were relieved, they could finally hug their grandson, even if only briefly. The court hoped this would protect the child while extradition continued. But in a turn that would horrify Canadians and Americans alike, the legal order was reversed in early 2003. On January 10, 2003, Justice Gail Welsh of the Newfoundland courts released Shirley Turner on bail. Her written decision was chilling. She presupposed Turner's innocence and argued that because the crime was specific in nature, Turner had already killed the only person she could kill and posed no general threat to society. The judge noted that Turner had appeared for hearings and would likely return for trial, so she was not a flight risk. Uniquely, the court returned custody of Zachary to Turner as part of the bail conditions. In effect, the child was handed back to the woman Americans believed had murdered his father. The Bagbys were heartbroken. Under the court's order, they had only supervised visitation rights. Meanwhile, Kurt Quinn was crisscrossing continents. Remember, Kurt had flown to Pennsylvania to see Andrew after the breakup. In the aftermath, he collected Andrew's home videotapes, footage of beach parties, birthdays, Andrew fooling around as a youth, and interviewed friends and family for a tribute film. As news of Zachary's birth reached him, Kurt realized this documentary could serve as a letter to a son about his father. He flew to England, to Los Angeles, and back to Pennsylvania, talking to every person who loved Andrew. In Canada, he also met baby Zachary, a bright-eyed boy clutching a teddy bear, and filmed emotional scenes of David and Kate holding the child, reminding him who his father was. Through Kurt's lens, we see Andrew's parents tearful but determined. During 2002 to 2003, TV news and newspapers were full of updates on this unusual custody battle, a murder suspect home free with child. By mid-2003, the extraordinary investigation had transformed into a legal and political saga. The United States continued to press Canada to surrender Turner. Canadian courts finally set extradition hearings, but Turner's lawyers kept filing appeals. In the public eye, the situation felt surreal. How could someone accused of such violence be free and raising the victim's child? Meanwhile, Andrew's family and friends promoted Kurt's film to lawmakers. Across Canada, senators and MPs watched Dear Zachary at special screenings and were moved to action. Public opinion was galvanized. Turner must be brought to justice. And all along, little Zachary waited, carried in his grandmother's arms during visits, while the world battled over his future. Just when it seemed the case might finally be headed to court, tragedy struck again, this time in Newfoundland itself. On August 18, 2003, a month after Zachary's first birthday, Shirley Turner led her young son to a beach not far from her home. In a heart-wrenching final act, she walked into the Atlantic Ocean with Zachary strapped to her chest. Daylight witnesses saw mother and child disappear beneath the waves. Turner's note to friends had said, "I'm sorry to have hurt you, but the real apology came too late." That day, both lives were tragically extinguished. The baby died of drowning, and when authorities recovered Shirley's body, it, too, showed no sign of struggle. She had held Zachary tightly as the water took them. Shock and outrage rippled through everyone connected to the case. Andrew Bagby would never know his son, Zachary would never know his father. Andrew's parents were devastated beyond words. David Bagby later said he felt anger unlike anything he could have imagined at Shirley Turner, yes, but more at the legal system that had failed to protect his grandson. In Newfoundland, Premier Danny Williams ordered a judicial review into the events. In 2006, the Turner inquiry reported a damning verdict: the tragedy was preventable. Judges, prosecutors, and child protection workers have been more concerned with presuming Shirley's innocence than with Zachary's safety. The report made headlines when it concluded that every level of government had erred. Even Justice Welsh's decision was scrutinized as a grievous mistake. Some accountability did follow. Dr. Shirley Turner's Canadian psychiatrist, Dr. John Doucette, was found guilty of professional misconduct for writing a letter on her behalf that aided her bail. The head of Newfoundland's Child Welfare Agency resigned under pressure. But no court ever passed judgment on Shirley Turner for Andrew's murder. She had died a free woman. No verdict would satisfy the Bagby's longing for justice. In the United States, the murder charge against Turner was never tried, because of her death. The only formal conviction was symbolic. Andrew's parents considered passing bills, like Bill C-464 Zachary's bill, through the Canadian Parliament. Indeed, in October 2009 Canada's Parliament adopted amendments to require judges to consider the safety of a defendant's children before granting bail. The phrase Zachary's bill became a testament to Andrew and his son. The law was changed in their names to say never again. Meanwhile, Kurt Quinn finished his documentary. Dear Zachary, a letter to a son about his father premiered in 2008. The film ends not with anger but with remembrance. Dozens of Andrew's friends and colleagues speak of his warmth and compassion, and Zachary's grandmother softly croons a lullaby in the closing scene. As one critic noted, the film is both a touching tribute to a fallen friend and a heart-wrenching account of justice gone astray. Audiences around the world wept and fumed with the Bagby family. The documentary won awards and brought media attention. It was even screened for members of Canada's Parliament to press the case for reform. Back in Latrobe, Andrew's legacy endured in other ways. A scholarship was established in his name to support compassionate medical students. Over the years, recipients of the Bagby Scholarship wrote heartfelt letters to David and Kate Bagby, vowing to honor Andrew's memory. In every address and interview, the Bagbys and Kurt Quinn stressed that Zachary died because the system failed, a failure no family should have to endure. The story of Andrew Bagby and Zachary Turner is devastating not just for its cruelty, but for how utterly avoidable it seems with even a little foresight. Dear Zachary reminds us that behind every tragic headline are real people, an expectant father weeping for a son he never held, and a helpless little boy whose bright life was snuffed out. As one Canadian MP movingly told Parliament, it is in the memory of Andrew and Zachary that we move legislation forward so that no one has to live through the devastation of losing loved ones in circumstances later determined to have been preventable. These words ring out at the film's close, a plea to remember the pain and to act on it. We end with the image of Andrew's smiling face and Zachary's innocent profile, both frozen forever in family photos. They never hurt or hated anyone. In fact, Andrew's friends say he would have fought just as fiercely for any child that needed help. That spirit, and the excruciating knowledge of what was lost, leaves us with an ache, a question to ponder. What if Shirley Turner had been held in custody? What if the legal system had listened to Andrew's friends when they warned about her? Those unanswered questions haunt viewers. Perhaps the greatest lesson is this: in the balance between a person's rights and a child's safety, we must not fail the innocent. In the end, Dear Zachary is more than a true crime chronicle, it is an emotional tribute and a cautionary tale. It challenges us to honor Andrew and Zachary not only in our hearts, but in how we shape our laws and our vigilance toward those who cannot protect themselves.